For many young people in Boston, the slow path to economic recovery has been especially painful. But the case in Boston is part of a much wider problem with a dramatic rise in youth unemployment over the last decade throughout the country. One response to the problem is to help young people continue their education, especially with access to experience and contacts in the workplace. That's the mission of the Boston Private Industry Council. We'd like to welcome the Executive Director, Neil Sullivan. Thank you very much for being with us, Neil.
Good to see you, Chris.
First of all, talk about the bigger picture you see out there for young people and why you think it is getting worse.
Well, the bigger picture for young people is the place they occupy in the labor market. They're at the bottom of the labor market. So when we have a sustained period of unemployment and we continue to educate people along the way, which is what we have done and should do during these periods, there's a push down in the labor market. So the college educated, some take college level jobs, others take whatever jobs they can get. That bangs into the high school graduate market. They then take jobs that otherwise would have gone to young people or to young adults without a diploma. So in the labor market, the two most hurting groups are youth, 16 to 19 years old, and young adults, 20 to 24, without a high school diploma. This is not an economic cycle for these two groups. Since the turn of the century, these two groups have fallen further and further away from their 20th century employment numbers. The new reports that are coming out, and we're seeing them nationally and locally, and they're very important. What's happened is for young people, young adults as well as teenagers, the earth has shifted underneath them. Employment rates are 40% less in many cases for teenagers. Young adults, employment rates never recover. This is a big change. It's in the context of a global economy, and we can watch where jobs go and who develops jobs. But at the end of the day, a whole generation is coming up into adulthood without significant work experience. As many as 40% of the population never getting jobs. I mean, one of the lines I use in trying to explain this to folks our age, if you're over 30, you remember your summer job and you remember the summer jobs your friends had. If you're under 30, you remember that someone had a summer job. It might have been you, but you certainly know how they got the job, from the Mayor's Youth Fund, from the PIC, from ABCD. The youth employment market at this point in Boston is a brokered market. It just doesn't pick up the way it used to. We used to, in the 90s, late 90s, joke about the South Bay Shuffle. You could get fired 3 times and not leave the parking lot. Those days are over. What we get for young people in employment, we get through public policy and active brokering in the labor market. We're not getting the kind of support we all remember when we were growing up.
Talk about the importance of those starter jobs, because as jobs themselves, they might not be very interesting, but for a student in high school, and I know they got to watch their schoolwork too, but just showing up on time and dealing with people, how important is that to their future?
There's a set of developmental skills, and we've been so focused on the academic, for good reason, we've been so focused on the academic as a nation, as a community, that we've begun to lose track of what makes someone productive. The ability to get along with a supervisor. For a teenager, the ability to communicate with adults, to get along with one's peers. Time management. We all struggle. Starting a project, finishing a project. These are skills. They're not things we're born with. Our generation learned those skills through experiences, work experiences that were available to us. Now that there are so many fewer work experiences for teenagers and young adults as they come up, we're going to have to figure out other ways to focus on developmental skills. These, by the way, are also what colleges talk about when they say college-ready skills. There's a body of work, skills that young people need to acquire. We can identify them, we can measure them, and we can improve them, just like academic skills. They don't compete with academic skills. In fact, often the failure to have self-regulation, resiliency, project management skills is why young people fail academically. But they also fail in life, and when they get older, they've had no experience that makes them valuable to their future employers.
Another figure that's out, and I think even in Massachusetts as a whole, we have more young people who are disengaged. They're not at work, They're not in school.
Well, this, I believe, is the biggest issue for President Obama in his second term. He's presided over an entire generation that has come of age without work. Now, they've reached the point where they've graduated from college, or perhaps an associate's degree, or perhaps high school, or perhaps they dropped out. That generation is sorted by their educational credential in that downward pressure I described a few minutes ago. So if you are 20 to 24 years old and you do not have a high school diploma, you are out of luck in this economy. Okay? If you have a high school diploma, you had better get a job that allows you to get some sort of degree or credential beyond high school, because the labor market is sorting those young adults out as well. When you step back and look at the status of America as we go into 2013, you see a whole generation of young adults for whom employment is not part of the experience, even when they're out of school 2, 3, 4 years. That's degrading for those individuals, for the community, and for our nation, and we need some fairly high-level leadership to acknowledge just how fundamental a change we're dealing with in employment for youth and young adults.
Well, one thing is you can help more of those students stay on track and at least get to the next step. You do that at PIC, you work with at-risk students, you work with students who dropped out, and you get them to come back.
Right.
How effective has that been?
Well, we have, as a community in Boston, the PIC and a number of other partner organizations, really figured out how to stay on top of teenagers and young adults to keep them going in their education. Now, quite frankly, it helps in a perverse way that there are not many employment options for them, so school seems like the only route forward. That, in fact, is true at this point. We're able to work with the Boston Public Schools through the new Re-Engagement Center to bring back hundreds and hundreds of students through every school year, students who dropped out of high school a year, 2 years ago. On average, they're 19. They've got a few credits. They were in school for a couple of years. They didn't go to class, and they didn't accumulate credits. We're able to bring them back into high school. Oops, wrong. We're bringing them back into secondary education. It's not going to be your traditional high school. Create pathways into community college, and now we're working on coaching them through community college to get a credential that allows them to play into this difficult labor market with the advantage that education provides.
Well, we're looking at that part of the road there into community college or even another college. If you look at state spending and you look at state efforts to make things work better, between those two, what do you see?
Well, state spending, and the headlines are getting worse every day, it seems, has been stagnant and dropping for so long now. We haven't in our careers been through a period of non-recovery in state revenues and state spending like the period we're in right now. That makes it very hard to address the work experience crisis. Okay? You know, quite frankly, the legislature and the governor have made youth employment a priority in the context of other services which have been eroded at even higher rates. Okay, so we've got to give our leaders their due. Youth employment, and largely because of Mayor Menino, the Boston Youth Coalition, a lot of good organizing, the public spending on youth jobs has held its own. The efforts that the PIC and other workforce boards and career centers do around brokering private sector jobs have slipped in terms of public spending, but we're looking for something of a recovery. I think we have traction because policymakers understand how important it is to get young people work experience as part of their secondary education, as part of their community college education. If you step back, though, and say, how much are we getting done? Well, given the context of a labor market that doesn't hire teenagers and young adults informally, not enough. Not enough. So we can both praise our political leaders for their focus, but also say, you know, this is not the storm that came in off the coast. This is the ground that shifted underneath us. And the response at a public policy level in a private sector partnership mode has got to be far greater than we have yet to imagine.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Neil Sullivan from the Boston Private Industry Council.